Few people know this, but before Michael Schumacher was celebrated as a 7-time world champion, his career was marked by accusations, controversy, and a shadow he could never escape: the reputation of a cheat. Ayrton Senna, at the height of his genius and prestige, was one of the first to see this dark side of the young German. The clash between the two was inevitable and brutal. What seemed to be just another rivalry on the track turned into a silent war, full of tension, suspicion, and explosive moments. This is the story that Formula One tried to hide. The fight between Senna and Schumacher, where talent and ethics collided with ambition and dark maneuvers. If you're a Formula One fan and want to dive into the sport's most controversial behind-the-scenes stories, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Because today, you'll discover why Senna said Schumacher was a fast driver but didn't know how to play fair. Michael Schumacher arrived in Formula One in 1991 at just 22 years old, making an immediate impact. His debut with Jordan at Spa-Francorchamps was impressive. He started in 7th place, surprising veterans. But along with his speed, an aggressive driving style bordering on recklessness quickly emerged. It wasn't long before drivers and journalists realized that Schumacher didn't respect the track limits or the unwritten codes of honor that existed among competitors. For many, the German represented a new generation that didn't care about traditions, only results. He would overtake in improbable spots, push rivals off the track, and take advantage of loopholes that, in other times, would have been seen as unfair. Ayrton Senna, who had already faced Prost, Mansell, and Piquet, quickly noticed that this kid wasn't just there to race, he was there to win at any cost. In the paddocks, the buzz was clear. Schumacher was fast, but even more dangerous. Engineers spoke about his coldness inside the car and his willingness to ignore limits. Senna, who believed that talent was the main weapon, began to closely observe the rookie's every move. It was as if he already knew that a battle of generations was about to explode. And this battle had a peculiarity. Senna, with his almost spiritual sense of purity on the track, saw racing as something greater than simple victories. Schumacher, on the other hand, seemed willing to destroy anyone who got in his way, even if it meant blurring the line between fair and illegal. The first major friction between Senna and Schumacher occurred in 1992, early in the season. At Interlagos, in front of the Brazilian crowd, Schumacher attempted a bold maneuver on Senna, nearly forcing the 3-time champion off the track. Senna didn't let him get away with it. He held his position, but when he got out of the car, he didn't hide his dissatisfaction. For him, it wasn't a normal dispute. There was a lack of respect, a premature arrogance. Senna was used to epic duels against Prost, which involved psychological warfare and strategic intelligence. But with Schumacher, the feeling was different. The German didn't seem to be playing Formula One's chess. He was playing poker, bluffing and risking everything, as if every corner were a life-or-death gamble. The tension increased with each race. In the pits, Senna commented to those close to him that the young German needed to learn the codes of honor of motorsport. For him, Schumacher represented a threat, not only because of his speed, but because of his dangerous style that could cause tragedies. And what was worse, Schumacher showed no respect for Ayrton's legacy. While other drivers revered the Brazilian, the German saw him as just another obstacle on his path to glory. This attitude deeply irritated Senna, creating an even more volatile climate of rivalry. Also in 1992, the first serious accusations against Schumacher and Benetton emerged. There were rumors that the team used illegal systems to gain time in the races, from traction control to irregularly adapted brakes. Nothing was officially proven, but the looks of suspicion were becoming more and more evident. Senna, attentive to every detail, began to publicly question these alleged irregularities. He saw in Schumacher a natural talent, but one distorted by the desire to win at any cost, and this mixture was dangerous. The Brazilian, who was always obsessive about technical perfection, would not tolerate the idea of someone cheating the rules and still posing as a hero. Other drivers also started to feel uncomfortable. In the background, Nigel Mansell and Alain Prost commented on the way Schumacher would cut chicanes or overtake under yellow flags. It was as if he were testing the limits of the officials, knowing he wouldn't always be punished. Senna saw all this as a warning for the future. For him, Schumacher represented a Formula One that was losing its essence. It was the clash between the Brazilian's romantic and purist vision and the German's calculated and controversial coldness. And each race seemed to confirm this divide even more. At Magny-Cours in 1992, the duel between Senna and Schumacher reached explosive levels. During the race, the young German closed Senna off brutally, forcing the Brazilian to back down to avoid a serious accident. The maneuver was so aggressive that it caused outrage even among commentators and engineers from other teams. Senna, known for his boldness, never backed down from a confrontation. But in this case, he realized he was facing someone willing to risk everything, including the physical integrity of his opponents. In the pits, the scene was worthy of a Western. Senna walked toward the Benetton garage, visibly angry, and the mechanics had to intervene to prevent a physical confrontation. Schumacher, in turn, maintained a cold and arrogant look, as if challenging the three-time champion to do something beyond the track. This episode made it clear that the rivalry had surpassed the sporting barrier and entered the personal field. The European press treated the case as a baptism of fire. For many journalists, Schumacher had just declared war on the most feared driver on the grid. But what might have seemed like courage, to Senna sounded like irresponsibility and disrespect. He even said in interviews that the boy needed to learn, or he was going to get hurt. It was a public and direct warning. Magny-Cours became the symbol of the beginning of the open war. It was no longer just about different driving styles. It was a matter of principles. Senna saw in Schumacher a distorted reflection of Formula One, where victory justified everything, including unethical tactics. The episode lit the fuse that would explode in the following months. As 1992 and 1993 progressed, the label of cheater began to follow Schumacher more and more consistently. Other drivers, such as Damon Hill and Riccardo Patrese, began to report similar episodes: high-speed close-offs, illegal overtakes, and cutting the track. It was as if Schumacher tested the limits in every race, exploring loopholes in the regulations and trusting in the slowness of punishments. Senna became the strongest voice against this behavior. In interviews, he didn't spare veiled criticism of the German. He said there were drivers who didn't understand the essence of risk and who were turning Formula One into a dangerous lottery. Schumacher understood the hint perfectly and, far from being intimidated, seemed even more motivated to challenge the Brazilian. Fans were also divided. Many saw in Schumacher a revolutionary talent, a new Senna, but others believed he was destroying the essence of fair competition. And this debate grew with each race in which a touch or a dirty maneuver by the German changed the final result. Senna, accustomed to winning by absolute talent and an almost spiritual dedication, would not accept the idea of seeing Formula One turn into a game of cheating. He saw Schumacher as the beginning of a dangerous cycle, where victory would become more important than ethics, and this philosophical confrontation only increased the tension between them. The relationship between Senna and Schumacher can also be seen as that of a strict master with a rebellious student. Senna knew that the German had immense talent and could become one of the greatest in history. But for that, he would have to learn to respect his opponents and the unwritten rules of Formula One. The problem was that Schumacher didn't want to be anyone's student, especially not Ayrton Senna's. Behind the scenes, Senna commented that Schumacher could become a champion, but warned that, the way he was racing, he would get lost along the way. This vision seemed almost prophetic, as years later Schumacher would collect titles, but also controversies. Intentional collisions against Damon Hill in 1994, against Villeneuve in 1997, and even controversial maneuvers against Barrichello in the 2010. During 1993, the disputes between them were even more tense. Schumacher already had victories, and Senna, in an inferior McLaren, was forced to extract every last drop of talent to not be swallowed up. But at no point did he back down. Senna used his experience as a weapon, trying to show the young rival that there was a hierarchy within Formula One that could not be ignored. This clash was, in fact, a lesson. Senna taught with a firm hand that talent without ethics does not sustain a legacy. Schumacher, in turn, seemed willing to learn only from his own mistakes, refusing the implicit guidance that Ayrton offered through their rivalry. The clash between these visions would shape the future of Formula One. The most dramatic point of the rivalry between Senna and Schumacher occurred at Imola in 1994. Senna, now at Williams, had Schumacher on his tail since the first race of the season. The German's Benetton was the target of serious suspicions. There was talk of illegal electronic systems, such as traction control and automated starts, resources forbidden by the regulations. Senna, obsessed with technical fairness, was suspicious. In the first two races of the year, Schumacher won and Senna retired. But the Brazilian would not accept the idea of losing unfairly. At Imola, he started in front, but he knew the German was right behind him, pressuring him like a predator. The atmosphere was one of absolute tension. On that fateful May 1st, Senna carried on his shoulders the mission of proving that he was still the best, and that he could beat Schumacher even under suspicious conditions. But fate did not allow it. His death interrupted not only a race but a rivalry that promised to ignite Formula One for years. Schumacher was the first to win in the post-Senna era, but always with the shadow of suspicion over how those victories were achieved. Senna's last lap was symbolically with Schumacher behind him. It was as if the German were the last barrier the three-time champion would face. And even today, this image echoes as a dark warning. Senna fought to the end against something he believed to be unfair, against a Formula One that was changing for the worse. After Senna's death, Schumacher dominated Formula One. His titles at Benetton and Ferrari consecrated him as one of the greatest in history. But along with the achievements also came the stains, intentional collisions, punishments, accusations of cheating, and a legacy divided between genius and dishonesty. What Senna already saw in the 90s was brutally confirmed. Senna fans always remember that the Brazilian saw in Schumacher a rival without limits. While Ayrton represented purity, courage, and ethics, Schumacher represented cold ambition, willing to trample any rule. This opposition became one of the most intense debates in Formula One to this day. While Schumacher achieved impressive numbers, he never had the unanimous respect that Senna earned. And this explains why, even after decades, the Brazilian is remembered as an immaculate legend, while the German still generates discussions about his ethics. The rivalry between the two was short, but explosive. Senna and Schumacher never had the chance to compete in full seasons at their peak, but the few duels were enough to write one of the most controversial chapters in the history of Formula One. And even today, the question remains: would Senna have tamed the rebellious German? Or would Schumacher have consolidated his supremacy over the three-time champion? Ayrton Senna left as a hero, faithful to his principles, defending the essence of Formula One until the last second of his life. Michael Schumacher stayed, won, and broke records, but also accumulated controversies that will never be forgotten. The duel between them did not end on the track, but in the hearts of the fans. Because deep down, it wasn't just Senna against Schumacher, It was the fight between pure talent and victory at any cost. And you? Do you believe Senna would have won against Schumacher in a full rivalry? Or would the German have confirmed his superiority? Leave your comment, like the video, and subscribe to the channel, because here we tell the truth that Formula One tried to hide.